Roberta Naas, and we are here at Watch Time New York, and we are here today with Fiona Kruger of Fiona Kruger.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. So, Fiona, you have been in the watch business a relatively brief time.
Yeah.
Not 160 years.
Yeah.
And you come from Scotland.
Yes.
And you've been creating some incredible timepieces. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell my viewers.
Sure. So so as you can tell by my accent, I'm not Swiss. I'm originally from Scotland. My background is in fine art, and I fell into watches by accident when I went to Switzerland to do a master's, with the intention of then teaching in the design or artistic field at university level. And Audemars Piguet at that time was the sponsor of the master's course. They asked my class to design a watch for their brand, and to be embarrassing, but I'd never even heard of them. I didn't know anything about watches at all, and it was during a visit to the Patek Philippe Museum that I fell in love with watches when I discovered their historical collection.
Right.
And they had pieces shaped like angels and animals and musical instruments, which made me realise a watch could be anything that you could imagine, which for an artist was really inspiring. And what I loved was that they had a real cultural heritage.
Right.
So they weren't just making a product for you to buy, that matched with your trousers. It was really something that had a real cultural weight and depth to it, and it was very creative, and that was a big appeal. So that was really how it started.
Okay. And when did you actually start your company?
So that was in 2013.
Okay.
So I did the design for what became the first skull watch on that course.
Okay.
And then was kept on as a teacher, and I spent 2 years finding the right supply partners to help me go into production. And in August of 2013 it all came into alignment, and with my husband we decided, well, we don't have any kids, we don't have a mortgage, so if you're going to try it now. And
Right.
that was it.
And here you are 5 years later.
Yeah.
And in addition to the really well-known skull watches that you do, you've just introduced the new Chaos line.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
Seeing it here, I've seen many pictures. It's nice to see it in person. Tell me a little bit about Chaos.
Sure. So, like I was saying at the beginning, what I love about watchmaking historically was this sort of cultural relevance that the pieces had. So, for me, I feel like it's when I'm designing a watch, it's about getting people to think about time, or showing them time maybe in a new way. So the skull pieces were a very human way of relating to the idea of time with life and death and the whole memento mori. And the Chaos line was about time itself, which is quite a broad idea. Mm-hmm. And there's certain things that we instinctively assume about time, like that it moves forward. But how do you know that? And it was when I was asking these kinds of questions that I then started learning about quantum physics. I say learning, dabbling, and lots of research and watching different things. And in a nutshell, there's a theory called entropy, which dictates that time moves forward, and we know this because things always go from order towards chaos. Like if you spill over a glass of wine, you just know that it won't unspill.
Right.
And that's kind of the premise. And I love the contrast between this idea of chaos and then watchmaking, which is so perfect and organised, particularly in Switzerland. And
right.
Bringing those two seemingly opposite worlds together in a piece was what interested me.
So in this piece, you actually have little shards. It looks like the movement has been created, and there are parts where you see explosions. You had to have this whole movement made to your specifications for you, and you worked with Jean-Marc Wiederecht.
Yeah, that's right. So I had met Jean-Marc, we ended up at the same conference like 4 or 5 years ago, and he came up and said hi, and we've basically been having a conversation ever since. He likes the way my brain works, and I just like Ageno. I think they're an amazing creative hub.
Right.
And all the different projects they've worked on, there's always that creative spark at the core of everything they do, so there's a natural fit there. And then I was telling him about this idea of designing something that was telling people about time in a new way. They really got into it. So they proposed to me that maybe they could develop a movement for me if I was up for the challenge. So of course I just said yes.
Uh-huh.
And at that point I thought, okay, well, if I'm thinking about this chaos idea, a sort of archetype to explain that is the idea of something exploding. An
Right.
explosion is something everybody relates to, from comic books to pop art to everything else. So I thought, well, if a movement was exploding, it would look like it's stretching out to go bang. So most movements are round to be as compact as possible. So I basically took the basis of a movement, redesigned it so the components were stretched out, and then worked with an engineer at Agenor called Guy. And he looked at the drawing and obviously went, yeah, okay, I get the idea, we'll do it this way. And then him and I worked back and forth really closely to develop how it would look, and then also with François to make sure that aesthetically what I wanted it to look like, how does that translate in terms of production? So
Right.
it was a real collaboration with them.
Well, it's fabulous because, you know, you're a woman in the business and you're not a watchmaker, but you've got all these great design ideas and you worked with them to make this all come to fruition.
Yeah.
There are various colors, various, is everything made of steel or
So the case is titanium.
titanium?
Yeah, the movement's really thin, and because of this kind of exploding, there's a lightness to that, so titanium made sense.
Right.
And yeah, so we've basically developed our own movement, which is like the heart of the collection. There's 2 skeleton pieces that
Right.
reveal the whole movement. They're called mechanical entropy. And then there's entropy 1 in blue, purple, and black,
Wonderful.
with a dial version as
And
well.
what sort of a price range are we talking?
In USD, we're around the $30,000 mark landed
Wonderful.
price. Yeah,
Wonderful.
and each of them is produced as a limited series of 18 pieces. So there's
Okay.
only 18 in the whole world
Wow.
of each one.
Okay, well, it's really beautiful. I love the blue. I know I love the purples.
Matches your eyes.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being here.